back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the young adult fantasy Firian Rising, and this is English Nerd. So, in today's video, I wanted to talk all about beta readers. The first round of beta readers for the Firian Rising sequel, Into the Unreal, just finished reading the book, and so I wanted to let you know what I've learned about best practices and how to find beta readers, everything that you need to know in order to do the process, at least the way that I've done it. There are lots of different ways that you can find beta readers and ask them questions and get some helpful advice, but these are the things that I've learned and the things that I do now that I am on book 2. First question is, what is a beta reader? I wanted to make sure everybody knows what I'm actually talking about. So a beta reader is somebody who reads your manuscript before it comes out, but it's not a professional editor, nor is it a proofreader. It's just somebody who enjoys the genre, who agrees to give you some feedback, and that's pretty much it. It's just not a professional, but somebody who's willing to let you know what they thought of your manuscript ahead of time. So in my first go around with my first book, I used beta reader feedback before I gave the book to an editor, so it could be as good as it possibly could be without professional help, and then I sent it off to the professionals. How do you prepare your manuscript for beta readers? So of course the most important thing is that you do editing yourself. They are not your only editors. You should definitely go back over your manuscript, make sure that your book is looking good, not only typos and things like that, but content as well. I made a whole video about editing for content a few months ago, so check that out. But make sure that you have a really good product to give to your beta readers, and that way the better your work is at this stage, the better it can become with the feedback. And then what I do is I break my book into chapters. I've mentioned in some other videos, I don't actually write in chapters, I write in scenes. So for me, an extra step is to make sure that I have chapters ready to go, and then I decide how many chapters I'm going to send at once. So in my case, it's between 3 and 6 chapters, depending on how long they are. So it's enough that people can get into the swing of things, but also not the entire book at once. So I make sure that I break the book into these manageable sections, and then I use reedsy.com, which is a great free resource for formatting, in order to create PDFs, professional PDFs of those different sections. So that way, I like doing the Reedsy formatting, even though it is a little bit time consuming to do this section and then add this section and then add this section, for a couple of reasons. One, there is the copyright stamp on there, so if you're at all concerned about your work being stolen, I'm not, but it's just a nice professional thing to add to the beginning. I also like doing the Reedsy formatting because that way people can read the book on their Kindles and it feels like a real book, and so they'll treat it more like an actual book. At least that's the hope while they're reading it, and will give you feedback just like they would give any other author with their book if it were in this particular state. So I would recommend that you go to reedsy.com. It's a great place, not only for formatting, but that's where I found my editor and lots of other things as well. After that, so you have your edited book, you have it formatted, you have the different sections. Next thing you do is, or at least the next thing that I do, and possibly the most important, is I come up with questions that I want beta readers to answer. I feel like it's almost too much work, or too much to ask, or too vague to just say, hey, what did you think of these chapters, or what did you think of my book? I mean, what are people really supposed to say? So I did a bit of research. I looked at Jenna Moressi's video on beta reading. I went to lists of beta reading questions on Pinterest. I just looked all around, and I found a good group of potential questions that I think hit the sweet spot between giving really good information to me and not having to take a lot of time for the beta readers, because it's already a huge time commitment. If anybody is willing to read your entire book, in my case a novel that's between 400 and 500 pages, having long, open-ended questions is just, it's a lot to ask. And so I try to find questions that you can expand upon, but also you can answer in a very short amount of time as well. So I ask things like, when did you feel like the story really began? Was it with the first chapter? Was it with chapter 3? Who's your favorite character at this point? Has anything been confusing? I'm trying to think of some others. What has been your favorite and least favorite scene so far? Have you noticed any repetitive tics that the characters have? Things like that. So I get a ton of really good information that is specific usually to those particular chapters that I'm sending, but it's also not a massive burden on the betas. So I know that I have some that answer with 1 or 2 words and others that go on for a paragraph per question, and both are valuable. So I have my questions, I have my formatted book. Then the next question is, how do you even find beta readers, people who are willing to read your book, and what kind of people are you looking for anyway? I've already said that these are not professionals, not people that you pay, for instance, but what you really want are people who are honest, hopefully honest and kind, but if you can get one or the other, go with honest, even if it's brutal. You want people who are honest, and you want people who read in the genre, ideally, but if you can, you also want a variety. So a variety of ages, variety, men and women, and maybe even somebody who reads outside your genre just to get a different perspective. But mostly you just want people who are honest and who are readers. So I ask my family, I ask my friends, and I also have done not shout-outs, but I've let my social media know, both through this YouTube channel and my Instagram, that I'm looking for beta readers. So that is also where I found some people who are happy to do it, who I haven't actually met in person or that I don't know very well personally, which is awesome. Really, I would love to have more beta readers that I don't know personally, just so that they don't feel any sort of loyalty to me or anything like that. My family, who has agreed to be beta readers, of course they do feel loyalty to me, but man, they do not pull punches. They are honest, which is perfect. So as long as you have somebody who is honest, then I say that you put them on the list. So those are some places where you can find them. There are also groups online, like Facebook groups and things like that, where I know people have found success in tracking down some beta readers. Another place where I ask for beta readers is my email list. I got a couple from that as well. I don't have a big email list or anything, but it is made up of people that I know, people that I don't know, and all of them are at least, I think, interested in the book. So it is great to get people who already know my first book who are reading the second, because I think just jumping into the second book would be kind of a trip. It would be quite the learning curve because of all the cool stuff that is set up in book 1. So now you're ready to send out some information. So I'm just going to read this. There's a lot of information that I send out before I send the first chapters. I let people know that there is no obligation to finish, and I've found both times now that I've done the beta reading process that not everybody does finish, certainly not in a short kind of time frame, and that's okay. It's better to have more beta readers than fewer, though, so that some can just get busy with life and doing other things, and that's okay, and you still have more than just 1 or 2 to really give you some feedback. So with the first initial info, I send out some of the basic expectations. So you don't need to proofread this, and all you need to do is give me your honest feedback, some of those basic things. I let people know genre and word count. So it's a young adult fantasy. This is generally what it's about, and generally how long it is. So I do give word count, but I also give approximate page count, because unless you're a writer, word count really doesn't mean anything. So about how many pages would this be if it were published? I also have any content warnings that might be relevant. I don't tend to have a lot of really hard-hitting content in my books, but I do have some cases of I do depict abuse and a couple other things like that I just let people know ahead of time, so if they feel like that's not for them, then they can get out and not read the book if they don't want to. I also put a disclaimer, which is important, I think, because of course there will be typos, there will be mistakes in the book, and if people want to point those out, great, just they shouldn't expect that this is the final draft. The point of beta readers is getting the book to the point where it can be the final draft. So I put a disclaimer on there. I also let people know deadlines. So what is the deadline for me to get everything to you? My rule of thumb is anytime I get feedback, then within 24 hours, I'm sending you the next bit. Normally it's a lot shorter, but that is the expectation on my end. And I also let them know if I'm not sending the chapters with these expectations, when I'm planning to send the chapters out. And then I make it very clear that I also expect that they finish the book within a certain amount of time. So I give a deadline for them too, which, since my book is so long, is about 5 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks, which, you know, for some is still a pretty quick turnaround for a book of that length. So I let people know that that is the expected deadline. That way I know what to expect, they know what to expect, and I can, you know, anticipate going ahead with my editing once all that feedback is in. So as an incentive for both helping me out and meeting the deadline especially, I give an incentive. So it's fairly small, I know, for the amount of work that goes into being a beta reader, but still having some kind of prize or some kind of gift card at the end is a really great and, I would say, necessary gesture. Unless your work is just something quite short, a short story or something, just a thank you would be nice. But I give $20 Amazon gift cards to anybody who just gives their honest feedback, no matter what it is, by the deadline. All right, so at that point, you are ready to send things out, get the process rolling. So what I do is I send just one bit at a time. So I've formatted those different sections, right? So I send out the first section, maybe the first 5 chapters, with that set of questions that go with the 5 chapters. And the deal is, once people respond, no matter what the feedback is, remember, I give the next section only after they've responded with their opinions. So it goes on and on like that. I send out the new section, I send out the new questions, and in order to keep track of all of that, so if you have lots of beta readers, that's a lot of information floating around, I have an Excel document. So it's right there. It looks like this, where you have the people's names, and across the vertical axis and across the horizontal top, I have the different sections that I'm sending out. And so green stands for I've sent it, but I haven't heard back, and blue stands for I've heard back, they've given feedback, and so that way I know where they are, even if the actual chapter numbers get lost in the shuffle somewhere. I know exactly what to send them, and that's pretty fantastic. Another thing to keep track of course, is the feedback. So I have one document that just has the questions by themselves, so I can easily cut and paste those into the email, but I have a replica document where I actually cut and paste all of the feedback by question. The first time around, I did it by question and by person, but I found that that was less useful than just having all the answers to one particular question without them being labeled by who sent the feedback. That way, at a glance, I can see, okay, yes, 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 no, no, and see if there are any trends that appear that way. A couple last little pieces to remember. Don't defend yourself. So anytime you get negative feedback, especially if it's like big negative feedback, the temptation is to say, but that's not what I meant. You know, if you look at it this way, this is, just don't respond, don't defend yourself. The only thing you should say are comments along the lines of, thanks, great, you know, got your feedback, here's the next bit. Just be very grateful for any feedback that you get, even if it's not what you want to hear. So resist the urge to defend or explain anything. What you want is just feedback. If this book were out in the world and they, you know, didn't have you to defend it, then what would people think? That's what you want. So make sure that you don't defend yourself, and finally, follow through with your incentives. Use that tracking system to figure out exactly who has earned your, you know, prize at the end, and follow follow through on anything that you say you're going to do with these people who are helping you. So that is pretty much it. Those are the things that I've learned about beta reading. If you have any other questions, please let me know down below. I definitely don't have this down to a perfect science. I really would like to find more beta readers. So to that end, I guess my last thing is, if there is anybody watching this video who, especially if you've read Firian Rising, who wants to be one of the first to read into the unreal, which is dark and gritty and twisty, I think it's really fun YA, then let me know. Respond in the comments and I can get you on the list. No pressure to follow through if you don't have the time or whatever, but I am looking for another round of beta readers for January, the month of January. So that'll be my last kind of editing pass before doing the final edit based on those suggestions for the release in May. So yes, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Like this video if you like it, and I will see you on Monday. Bye!